It's that time again, everybody. It's time to duke it out. Utes and Cougars style. It's the Holy War. This is the biggest one in rivalry history. I've got no problem saying that, and we're going to debate it on today's edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes. I'm Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars, covering all things BYU. That across from me digitally is my good buddy, J.T. Wistrcill, host of Locked On Utes, your daily podcast focused on all things Utah Utes. And, of course, we are proud to be part of the Locked On podcast, where, of course, the motto is your team every day. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get it.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can download today.
And also, make sure that you give each one of us, your crap on social media. We always appreciate that as well. But, JT, it is that time. The Holy War is here. Saturday night, it all goes down. We have the 23rd ranked Utah Utes as a slight favorite, according to our friends over at FanDuel, over the 15th ranked BYU Cougars. I want to start right now and say, how in the world did you think that we were going to get 40% Utah fans in LaVell Edwards Stadium?
Well, I'm just thinking at the start of this thing, you're like, make sure you guys go into our mentions and give us crap for our takes. I'm like, I really need help with that this week, Jake.
I'm adding fuel to the fire here. Let's go.
I was totally fired up. It came 18 minutes into the crossover with Drake, and I was just on a tangent. And I was like, I don't know, be 70-30. You know, it's a short drive. And then, I know. Then once I sat down and thought about it after I saw the clips, I laughed. I was like, you know, that was ridiculous. That was this is the third show now I've had to walk that one back, and I'm willing to admit when I was wrong. I was really wrong about that one, even though I do think there will be scattered red in the crowd.
Okay, there will be red in the crowd. Yeah. But JT, if it's more than 15% of the crowd, that's a big number.
I agree. Once you take a step back, once you take a step back from the emotions of the show, you're like, oh yeah, I really did say that, didn't I? Oh, that was
see, here's the thing. Like 60-40, that could happen if, like, you know, we played like Texas and Oklahoma, where we played in a neutral site, and they legitimately split it down the middle, and obviously one side gets 50%, the other side gets 50%. That could obviously fluctuate that number. But when BYU sells 44,000+ season tickets, yeah, you're never getting 60-40.
Yeah, it's a little problematic. That's why I shouldn't do math. I should leave the math to the people in Vegas, which is why I found it very interesting that Utah is actually favored in this game, Jake, because the last time a top 15 team at home was not favored in their matchup versus a lower ranked team was 2 years ago. So it's been a while since this has been this case. Vegas seems to like the Utes and maybe think the Cougars are a tad overrated. I tend to agree.
JT, BYU is 17-2 in their last 19 games going back to last season. I would venture to say the majority, more than half of those games, and we're talking, I will never forget the fact that BYU went to UCF last year. UCF was sub 500 on the season, and BYU was somehow an underdog, according to FanDuel and other sports books out there. So, yeah, they can put Utah in as a favorite, but BYU, this is par for the course. They are totally cool with the disrespect tag.
The only thing I'll say on last year, Jake, is you yourself projected BYU at what, 4 wins?
No, I said 6-6. I said bowl.
So everyone was caught off guard by BYU last year is the only thing I'll say. This year, people aren't caught as off guard, and we knew this in the schedule even coming in this year. You said yourself you thought they should be 6-0 going into this game, barring something catastrophic.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. BYU's played the soft portion of their schedule. This 6-game stretch they're in, and it started last week against Arizona, because I think the Wildcats have proven to be pretty darn good this season so far. But this 6-game stretch that BYU's in right now, JT, Utah's the second of the 6. This 6-game stretch is going to define BYU season for better or worse, because if they can rise up and play the type of opponents they're going to play in this stretch and win the majority of them, yeah, that team's going to be capable of contending for Big 12 glory. But if they fall flat on their face, yeah, well, the paper tiger moniker and what you're talking about with the sports books, thinking they may know something about BYU that we don't know, that also is very, very valid.
It is, and everything's up for grabs for Utah here too. If you lose this game and you're Utah, BYU can lose this game and in a way still control their own destiny. It's tough because of what another stratosphere tech looks like right now. Utah, there's no way they lose this game and control their own destiny. You need help then.
And that's the thing about this, JT, because BYU, they can lose to Utah and still find their way to Arlington relatively easily. Whereas for Utah, if you lose the tiebreaker to Texas Tech and you have the tiebreaker against BYU, you don't have the tiebreaker against BYU.
No, we will. After this weekend, we will.
Okay, fair. Okay. Hold on. We're not getting to predictions yet, sir. But the point is, yeah, if you don't have the tiebreaker against either one of the other two big teams, and I know Cincinnati's also in the mix right now, that would be a death knell for your chances of ending up in Arlington, it looks like.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a chance, as I think you are willing to say too, right? Like there's a world where BYU beats Utah, and because of what a gauntlet of a schedule they still have, they go on to lose another 3 games in that schedule. And then if you're Utah and you win out, so you're not done if you're Utah, but what did I just say? BYU has to lose first. So that's where, if you're Utah, this is a must-win game, and it being a rivalry game is what makes this one so special and spectacular on Saturday.
So, and the thing about this, I argued this earlier this week on the podcast, JT, and I want your thought on this because I consider this to be the biggest ever in rivalry history, considering the stakes. The winner of this game does have that inside track, it appears, to go to Arlington and face off what I think will be Texas Tech, because Tech looks like they are light years ahead of everybody in the league right now. So this game, it's in some ways a Big 12 title game eliminator, and that raises the stakes significantly, in addition to the fact that it's the first time we've got ranked opponents in this matchup for the first time since 2009, and also the fact that they're in the Big 12. This is for a whole lot more marbles than we've ever had before.
Well, I sometimes listen to Locked On Cougars because I think that Jake Hatch is a pretty smart guy. So
you do what?
I sometimes listen to Locked On Cougars because I think that Jake Hatch, man, he knows a little something. Just like I learned when me and Jake Hatch about 5 years ago were calling Parker Kingston's final high school football game. It's crazy to go on and watch the success Parker and a couple of these other guys. We called Glasgow that year too, I think, have been gone on and been able to have. But yeah, this BYU team, this Utah team colliding, it's an epic matchup. And honestly, Jake, for the reasons you laid on your show, the fact the first time in 16 years, the fact they both look like contenders, the not just the bragging rights that come with winning this game, but the conference championship implications of having the tiebreaker. I got to believe, I think this is the biggest one we've had in years. And last year's was epic, obviously, the way it ended and everything. This one, the sequel, with even more crossover on both sides too, with transfers, it feels like the sequel to last year's Big 12 debut of the Holy War rivalry is going to exceed the hype.
Okay, real quick, JT, on that front, speaking of, this could be an elimination type game. What is the biggest, I guess, motivating factor you think for Utah in this? Is it the fact that it could be Kyle Whittingham's final game at the helm of Utah in a rivalry game, or is it more for the fact that you need to avoid losing 3 straight to BYU, especially considering the Cougars have a freshman quarterback that could set them up for success in the foreseeable future in said rivalry?
I think it's the 3 straight thing, especially for recruiting implications, because you've already lost to them 2 times in a row now. And at the time you were able to overcome, I feel like in recruiting, the 21 loss because you went on to win Pac-12 titles, right? Like you became, for that stretch, you were a better program than BYU. Like just you're winning conference titles. Last year, BYU was the better program. They had more success than Utah. And now this feels like a game where it's very much up for grabs. If whoever wins this game, obviously BYU will stay above Utah. Utah will leapfrog BYU. And this one just has so many implications. It's absolutely massive. I feel like at this present moment, it dwarfs the long-term implications, dwarf Kyle Whittingham's potential final Holy War rivalry game.
Okay, I want to explore that more, and we're gonna get to that momentarily because I've got a good launching point that I think we can talk more about that, and we'll get to that next as we roll on this crossover edition, rivalry edition, Holy War edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. Now, if you are in the trades industry, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see the parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. The real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. I think anybody who is in the trades world knows exactly what you're talking about. And the best part is the Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother along the way. Join the free Trademaster program today and score various perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. And visit Supply House right now to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com, real people and real services. And once again, use that promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if yours wins. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And FanDuel, they really just make it simpler, right? Whether you're a casual fan who loves diving into the stats or a diehard fan, FanDuel makes the game day experience even more exciting. And we talked about how great NFL football is, but we also got an awesome slate of college football coming up, including Utah taking on BYU this week. When you look at Utah's game against BYU, Utah right now favored by 3.5. And I think the Utes are going to have a strong performance. I like the Utes in that one. However you're feeling, you can head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started with FanDuel Sportsbook.
Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us. Of course, it's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's JT Wistrcill of Locked On Utes. I'm Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars, covering all things BYU. And JT, there's been a lot of talk about the NIL implications of how recruiting is going between these two longtime rivals, speaking of the Utes and the Cougars. You just talked about the fact you believe that losing 3 straight is a bigger deal for Utah recruiting-wise than it would be for the Kyle Whittingham potentially stepping aside and this being his final rivalry game. Is it because you're worried about more and more money flowing into the coffers of BYU NIL-wise if the lay public out there says, you know what, BYU's light years ahead of Utah right now, and that's what we're going to invest our money in?
That's a great point. Jake, let's just be real. BYU clearly has better NIL funds than Utah. Like, that is evident right now. The recruits they are landing. I'd even say some of the players in the transfer portal, right? Like, if you're Utah, you already are losing the NIL battle. Do you want to continue to lose the on-the-field battle? Sure, you barely lost the one last year, but to lose, it doesn't matter how you lose this one. It would be 3 in a row. So now you're even that when you offer like, hey, you have a chance to compete for conference championships. That's what Utah could always offer these guys, right? Over a BYU at a time. Well, that went out the window last year. And if you lose to them again, with BYU, it's likely that I can get a better NIL deal than a Utah can, because we've just seen, as we said, like Utah didn't land anyone close to AJ Dumbonsa on the hardwood. And football-wise, BYU's landed some very talented players as well. Ryder Lyons coming in a couple of years, right? That quarterback product. So you're already losing the NIL battle. Now you're going to lose I have a better chance to win if I go over there too. Sure, maybe I could play at Utah sooner, and Utah's development is still fantastic, but what Jay Hill has brought over to BYU, right? Their player development has taken a huge leap forward. So I really think this would be a crushing loss long-term for Utah if they were to lose this.
Now, I'm going to quote the immortal Major League. Today we won. If we win tomorrow, that's 2 in a row. If we win after that, it's called a winning streak.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what BYU's chasing right now. Trust me, we're not that far removed from BYU losing 9 straight to Utah. I don't need to remind any Cougar or Ute fan within the sound of our voices of that very fact. And during that run, JT, what you just said was absolutely the truth. Utah offered far more than what BYU could offer. It was playing in the Pac-12 at the Power 5 level at the time. It was competing for a legit conference championship. There were so many things in favor of Utah in that. And once BYU entered the Big 12, and with the Pac-12 going the way of the earth, it's going to be reimagined, but it disappearing essentially, it has leveled this playing field. And quite honestly, it feels like BYU's got the upper hand. And if they win this game, it only enhances that.
It absolutely does. Like we said, they're bringing in better recruiting classes right now, right? Like, they're bringing in more talented transfer players. Like, we've done the whole Keanu Tanavasa thing, but like Keanu Tanavasa choosing BYU like that. When's the last? It's been a little bit since a really good a Utah player, like at his peak prowess, would then go to the Cougars. And Utah's still been able to get some of the John Henry Dailies, the Logan Fanos, but how long does that continue to happen, right? I didn't see, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, when Carson Ryan went over to BYU too, right? Was there any Cougar players from this last year that came over to Utah?
Not this last year. And
how about Hunter Clegg too? Hunter Clegg.
I was going to say Hunter Clegg just recently flipped. Obviously, he never ultimately enrolled at Utah. He had signed with the Utes before his mission, but then enrolled at BYU post-mission. But to your point, it's absolutely legitimate, because here's the thing. There are going to be people screaming, well, John Henry Daly. Okay, when John Henry Daly left BYU, you had no idea what he was ultimately going to emerge as at Utah. He's become a phenomenal football player. Trust me, you and I called his high school games, and for my money, he's the best defensive end prospect this side of Hunter Clegg that has come out of this state in recent memory. Absolutely legitimate talent, but the question was, when he left BYU, is he really going to see kind of get to that level that we all expect him to get to. To his credit, he's done it at Utah. But to your point, Keanu Tanavasa, he was at the peak of his powers playing for Utah. Injuries had marred some of that, and he transferred at the peak of his powers. That's the big difference here. Carson Ryan, he's become everything BYU wanted it in their tight ends that they've literally been pining after for 4 or 5 years now. So you're right. It's an interesting dynamic that while there may be some underproven talents who may move one way in this rivalry right now, more proven talents are moving the other.
Yeah, and that's where it's concerning for Utah. And that's where you need to continue to do everything in your power to find the Smith Snowdens, to find the Spencer Fano. The recruiting and development is still there for Utah. We just mentioned John Henry Daly. Most Utah fans, a lot of you did. But a lot, you also had no idea who he was last year because he was a rotational guy and he barely did anything. The fact that he has now sprung onto the scene the way he has is a huge credit to Utah's player development and the ability they've done to help guys reach their full potential. That's what Utah still has to continue to cling to, because it's concerning that BYU is starting to land some of those higher level players. And it's no secret last year, Jake, tell me, for Utah, losing Cameron Calhoun's another one. He said he was going to stay at Utah, and then he goes, did BYU lose any? The only one's the receiver, right? Who went to Miami. That's the only one, right? And Miami's another NIL beast.
Yeah, Keelan Marion ultimately came down to he wanted more money than BYU was willing to pay him, so he runs to Miami. Good for him. Harrison Taggart also was the other big name I think you would consider. He was a starting middle linebacker for BYU last year. Cialia Sarah's filled in very nicely in that spot, but he was also chasing the bag. And BYU said, you know what? We've got Cialia Sarah. Go find your bag elsewhere. And he's now at Cal. And to their credit, they found the money. But to your point, JT, that's the concern Utah and BYU to a lesser degree, you've got to be concerned about in this era of college football is your top talent. While they may be loyal to your program for right now, doesn't mean that tomorrow that there's not a number out there that they get offered and they're like, hey, thank you, but I'm going over here.
And Devin Dampier is a guy I've already talked about being slightly concerned coming into the year. If he has the type of year I said he would, I said at one point he'd be a top 10 Heisman finalist. I don't think he's out of the running for that yet, but it would still take a lot to get there. He's not out of the running. He's not. He's got time to get back in it. How many times we've seen quarterbacks have bad performances and work their way back up? He was pretty good last week, right? And also, Jake, the Heisman race is a mess right now. Who's even the favorite?
It is a mess, but does he have the passing stats that are going to get him anywhere near that podium?
No, that's where he needs to take another step up there. But as I said, it's a down year for the Heisman race. And I never said he'd even end up in New York. I said top 10, and I'm not willing to rule that out because the one thing Devin Dampier has generated, Jake, is moments. The play against Wyoming, the pitch last week with one hand. He's had these moments, and you know what would be pretty nice? Having one of them against your bitter rival this weekend too. But going back to the original point you made, yes, the concern is absolutely there that you're going to continue to lose top talent, even to the team across the way. But if you're beating them, that helps a lot saying hey, well, you want to go play for the team that we beat. That can where it helps Utah. Also, really quick before I throw it back to you, so excited to see the player Cialia Sarah has come. That's another guy I loved watching in the high school ranks. Really love what he's been able to do for BYU.
Well, he only had a career high 16 tackles last week and 74 snaps because Jack Kelly was unavailable last week. And people were rightfully upset and concerned that Jack Kelly was unavailable against Arizona. And they easily needed him in that game. There's no doubt. Noah Fafita, that kid is absolute dynamite. And his ability to move in the pocket is exactly what Devin Dampier is going to be able to do against BYU if they cannot contain him. The bigger point is, they need to have it all hands on deck. And the hopes are, and we're going to see how this all plays out with regards to the injury reports that will first come out tonight.
Don't expect much from Utah. Don't expect much.
Well, okay, here's the thing. We're hearing more about Utah guys that are, quote, dinged up from Kyle Whittingham in press conference. This is that have never sniffed being on that injury report. I got to think, JT, isn't the conference office saying, what are you guys doing? Stop admitting to injuries if you're not going to put them on said report.
I think it's a bad look for Utah. I've said it from the start. What they continue to do with the injury report. You look at all the other injury reports. They're fully filled out, probable, questionable, in depth. And Utah will have the 5 dudes out with season-ending injuries, or Nate Ritchie because he's been out a little longer, and 1 questionable. It's a bad look. Devin Dampier. Watch Devin Dampier against Arizona State. Watch him against Texas Tech. Of course, Tech's a better defense. That's clearly a different player out there. He was clearly injured going into that Tech game. You cannot convince me there was 1,000% chance certainty he was going to play. Devin Dampier absolutely fit under the definition of probable. He should have been listed as such. And based on what he's talking about going into this week, Sean Parker is a guy who should probably be listed as probable. And some of those, even the defensive tackles, a Jackson Benny, I'm surprised they weren't on the injury report. Although I shouldn't be surprised because this is Kyle Whittingham. He said he'd be willing to do injury reports, and he's dragging his foot like the kid who's like, fine, mom, since you made me do it, I will.
Well, and that's the thing. He went tit for tat. You make me do an injury report that I'm only going to half-heartedly fill out.
Yeah.
Ain't no depth chart coming your way. So
no, exactly.
This is Kyle Whittingham's MO, everybody. Just get used to it. I don't know how long he is for the job. That's another topic for another day down the line. Maybe not too far down the line, but that's another story for another day, JT. But it's an interesting dynamic nonetheless. And I'm not sure where ultimately it ends up, whether the Big 12 says, you know what, whatever, Utah, you do your thing. But they already did essentially slap their hand earlier this season when they made a mockery of it. I just do wonder how much more Utah could really push it and not find themselves actually getting more of punishment coming with it.
I totally agree. I think it continues to be a bad look. And I don't know why the Big 12, they kind of let them get by with the Dampier thing. But I mean, wasn't it almost immediately after the game, or I'm trying to remember, wasn't it almost immediately after the game, Jake, he started talking about Dampier's injury?
Like the Texas Tech game. He's like, yeah, he got hit late in that Wyoming game, and it didn't look good for the first few days of this weekend. It's like, so you're telling us he didn't practice and you didn't, think that, hey, this thing that the bettors have obviously, because it's all about sports betting. Let's be real. That's why these player availability reports exist. That's the number one reason why. But you're telling us your guy doesn't practice. You admit to all of this, but he never made an appearance. Well, he was never in danger of not playing. Okay, that's not the point.
Yeah.
But, oh well. So JT, getting back to the point at hand, big game Saturday night. The hope is that these teams are as close to 100% healthy, and now it's mid-season, so there are dings and dents across the board, whether it's bruises and the like. But this is a huge game, big implications for all this. We've discussed all of that, but we got to get down to the nitty gritty. Where do things turn, in our opinion, in this game? And we'll get to that next as you roll on this crossover edition of Locked On Utes and Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Now, Mazda's here for you guys to get you everything that you do, the more than simply move. The best part is they deliver confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anybody else out there on the market as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. They bring that same intention to how they craft every single model. The best part is you make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls with every Mazda vehicle. And with all-wheel drive standard and every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost every season. The best part is we're getting into the winter and late fall months here in Utah, and that is an absolute necessity up this way. So like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Utes your first listen of the day. JT Wistrcill covering all things Utah. I'm Jake Hatch covering all things BYU. And even though our online personas may be a little contorted by people thinking that we're one way or the other, we are real good buddies in real life.
Yes, we are.
So, JT, huge game, as we've already discussed. So many implications on this one at LaVell Edwards Stadium. Big noon kickoff in town, 6 o'clock under the lights at LaVell Edwards Stadium. Might I remind Utah fans, BYU's last 27 night games at LaVell Edwards Stadium, the record is a sterling 24-3. So how are you going to overcome that and add another loss to that column if you're Utah?
Well, we know it won't come from Utah fans in the stands. We covered that earlier. So what we do know is that BYU is a true freshman quarterback, and Bear has been better than I thought he would be. But the fact remains he is still having growing pains, and this will be by far the best defense he has played on the season. I've been impressed with LJ Martin. I've been impressed with your run blocking too. But I think if you're Utah, it's pack the box, make Bear Bachmeier beat you consistently. Jordan Tyson, he's a really good receiver, right? And Chase Roberts is too. BYU only limited Tyson to under 50 yards last week. If you're Utah, don't let Roberts beat you. Make the other guys. Parker Kingston's played well these last couple weeks, but we were kind of waiting for him to do something even before then. So if you're Utah, get this BYU team in 3rd and long. Get pressure in Bear Bachmeier's face. When he's pressured, according to Pro Football Focus, his grade drastically drops too as well. He becomes a much worse quarterback. It's a 46 passing grade, which is 88th in the country. I think Morgan Scalley is going to be throwing a lot at him. So that's the key on that side of the ball. And on the other side of the ball, if you're Utah, it's let that offensive line cook. Jake, if I'm a BYU fan, I'm concerned about the pass rush in this game. Your guys' leaders and pressures on the season are your 2 inside linebackers. They're great players, but that shouldn't be the case. There's yet to be that dominant pass rusher step up. Utah's deep offensive line has the best sack allowed rate in the country. All 4 sacks they've allowed have been on the quarterback. Ryan Davis, the one big pass play Utah had, he had all day to throw back there. Dampier did. So if you're Utah, let your trenches cook on both sides of the ball, get after Bear Bachmeier, and you might just come out of Provo with a win.
So here's the thing about that, JT. Right, I point you, and I know that West Virginia is not that great of a program because both Utah and BYU had their way with them. West Virginia put 8 men in the box routinely. Their safeties were no further than 10 yards downfield for vast stretches of that game in Provo. What did Bear Bachmeier do with that packed box? Only passed for a career-high 249 yards in the first half alone in that game. I encourage Utah to pack that box and let Bear Bachmeier beat you with his arm because he's already proven, and I admit, the Utah's defense, light years better than West Virginia. I got no problem saying that. But I would think that Bear Bachmeier is relishing the opportunity to go up against it's a secondary of Utah that's not as vaunted as it has been in the past, and they've absorbed some injuries on the back end. Rabbit Evans, Nate Ritchie, they're unavailable for this game, if I'm not mistaken, JT. There could be some opportunities for BYU to scheme some stuff up, but I'm interested to see how BYU decides to attack this. LJ Martin has been nothing short of a workhorse. He has been the running back Cougar fans have been looking forward to see since he was a 4-star prospect out of El Paso High School that they flipped from Stanford. I think that 1-2 combo in the backfield is pretty darn good. And BYU's offensive line, while it may not be as good as Utah's and as vaunted as the Utes, I still think it's pretty darn good. And we'll see how it goes up against a defensive front that Utah is still a little bit in transition. John Henry Daly, absolutely elite. But I've got some question marks about the overall play of the other interior guys on that Utah defensive line. We'll see how it all goes. I will say this, JT. I think whichever offensive line bosses the opposing defensive line has a major edge in this game. And I think on paper that absolutely would go in favor of Utah because I'm hearing there's somewhere north of 20 different scouts from different NFL teams. They're going to be in Provo, Utah. And I can tell you the focal point isn't necessarily Isaiah Glasker or Jack Kelly because they're absolutely going to be draws. It's more for the two offensive tackles that Utah's got lining up on their side of things. We'll see how it all plays out. Now, I will also add this, JT. You mentioned the fact that BYU's pass rush has struggled. There's no doubt about that. It has been needing to see an upgrade, and the hope is that at some point it will pay off. I've got my question marks that BYU is probably going to have to bring pressure, whether that's nickel and corner blitzes, bringing Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker on stimulated pressures and the like. They're going to have to manufacture that pressure, and they're going to have to make sure that, unlike Noah Fafita last week, you do not, under any circumstances, if at all possible, let Devin Dampier get out of that pocket. Because if he does that, we saw the havoc it created last week against the Wildcats in Tucson.
You did. Devin Dampier, incredibly dynamic with his legs. But if you are BYU, you want to get Utah in third and long passing situations like a Texas Tech was able to do. We have to wait and see if BYU has the level of defenders that Tech does. I'm not trying to say anything bad about BYU. I'm just keeping it real. That Tech D-line, all the guys are going to be in the NFL. Like, they have been on another level this season. And BYU, like we said, they still have to prove that. Another concern, I will say this, concern for Utah's defense. There's been some tackling issues on the year. We're still kind of waiting for that to get cleaned up. So Martin, even Bear, being tough to bring down. That's something that Utah has to tighten up and do a little bit better. In some ways, Jake, this might come down to which quarterback plays better. And that's where I do feel better about Utah in this game. Jake, don't click me for that. Don't click me for that. Don't click me.
But right now, he picked BYU. We win.
I think that Devin Dampier's experience.
3-0. 3 is coming. You just heard it right there. That's all. We're done. Stop the count. We're over. It's over. The podcast is over right now.
It wouldn't be the first time this week I've been clipped, but I do think that Dampier's experience gives him a leg up in this game. It's a very intriguing Jason Beck going against BYU for the first time in this game, Utah's offensive coordinator. I'm curious to see how he's going to perform in this one. The Keanu Tanuvasa element was discussed so much during the offseason, and I've even seen some or heard BYU fans are a little displeased with how Keanu's performed as of lately, so this is probably a big game for him, right?
Yeah, it is a big game for Keanu because he's had 2 games in a row where he's had boneheaded penalties. There was a targeting call that's indefensible on Noah Fafita in the Arizona game, and before that against West Virginia, came in late and hit their quarterback in the back with a late hit. Those are plays. If you're a team captain like he is, you can't have that stuff, and he needs to clean it up. And you can guarantee these guys at Utah know him as well as anybody. They'll be trying to bait him as much as possible in this game. I will say this before we go. The biggest variable in this game, because these two staffs and these two programs know each other so well, JT, the one variable in this, even though he's a former BYU Cougar, it is Jason Beck. Ja Beck himself, as many Cougar fans know him. The fact that he is the one person who's been working outside of the market for quite some time, developing his craft and the like, That adds an element to it that I'm very interested to see how it all plays out. But we got to go quickly here. So give me your prediction and I'll give mine as we close out this show.
I think it's a great game. I think Fox made a great choice picking it as big noon kickoff. I think it lives up to the hype back and forth. I don't think either team's getting over 30, but I do think Devin Dampier, the Utah offensive line, and a couple turnovers from Bear Bachmeier are the difference. I'll take the Utah Utes to finally beat BYU once again, 27-20.
Okay, so you think it's a 7-point spread. I do not think it's more than a one possession game. I got zero doubt about that. The history of this rivalry suggests that alone. BYU finds a way somehow, some way. And yes, I know that Colorado and I know that what they did against Arizona have left some Cougar fans thinking, are they really as good as they think they are? The one thing BYU has proven over the last season and a half, JT, they find ways to win football games. And it may not be pretty. It can be downright ugly at times. But give me the Cougars 24, Utes 23. That's all that matters, getting a W on the scoreboard.
1000%. It should be a great game either way, a great opportunity to spotlight the talent in the state of Utah because both these rosters absolutely loaded with that. And I can't wait to get this one kicked off, Jake. Going to be a blast.
All right, JT, where can Cougar fans, if they haven't found you already on social media?
They really need help with that. At JT Wistrcill, come throw it my way at Locked On Utes. You guys can subscribe as well. We got some hate watchers all the time, as I'm sure you do occasionally too, Jake. Always some fun banter on our Big 12 squad shows too.
No doubt. You can find me at Jacob C. Hatch on X or Twitter. And if you want to follow all things BYU Locked On Cougars, wherever you get your podcasts, also available on YouTube. And it is also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under the same handle, Locked On Cougars. For JT, I'm Jake. Enjoy the game, everybody. It is rivalry week, and it is a ton of fun. And be back with us every single day as every day is right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.